Hi,
Hello,
Odin.
everyone. Thank you for joining us virtually for this hydroponic workshop. We're really excited that you joined us online. I'm going to actually turn it over to Odin as he will be presenting today. Just a few housekeeping rules. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can raise your hand or type it in the chat. And at the very end of the presentation, we'll unmute everyone and we can have a discussion then, or if you have any questions, you can certainly ask then.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Odin, and here's our hydroponic workshop by DIGA. So what is hydroponics? So hydroponics is actually quite simple. It's basically growing plants in water with added nutrients but no soil. So hydroponics works by providing the plant the oxygen, water, and nutrients it needs. This is much like you would in your soil when you're planting at home. Soil just acts as a porous material to transport oxygen and water to your plants, but hydroponics takes that out of the picture. And so with no soil, the most important part of hydroponics is making sure a plant's roots receive a balance of water and oxygen. So without that porous material to balance out the oxygen and water, it's kind of up to you as you making your hydroponic system to make sure that that balance is maintained. And so, of course, as many home gardeners know, it's easy to mess up that balance by over or underwatering your potted plant, especially if your potted plant is in a closed pot. I know I've struggled from that a little bit. So actually, hydroponics has quite an extensive history, and it originally was started, or the first recorded cases was in the Hanging Towers of Babylon around 600 BC. And that's an illustration on the right. So why hydroponics? So on a professional level, like a large scale commercial farm, it is incredibly efficient. It uses less water, no soil, no pesticides, and less space. So in a hydroponic farm, the water is circulated throughout the farm in a closed system. So no water goes to waste, and the plants only take as much water as they needed. No soil is needed, so that means no pesticides because there's no pests. Oftentimes they're in a closed building, like you see in the picture to the right. And hydroponics are often stacked on top of each other. It's called aeroponics, and that's what you see in the right there. So you don't need these massive acres of a large-scale farm. You can have it in a building, say in a city. It is a clean, contained technology that allows cultivation year-round. So they use grow lights, and really clean depends on the farmer, but you can use organic fertilizers in hydroponics. So that offers a clean plant. Plants grown hydroponically generally grow faster. For myself, I grew my own hydroponic plant here. And so I planted two at the exact same time. And I don't know if you guys can see here, but this one is quite developed. The leaves it's only a week old or something since it's been planted. And then I have these ones that were planted in dirt at the exact same time. And they almost look like they're still seedlings. So it was quite exciting for me to see how fast my lettuce plant grew. So hydroponics can be grown in cities. So this also significantly reduces food miles, reducing our carbon footprint, and reduces the decline of nutrients in the produce. So on these large-scale farms outside of these cities, the food has to be transported to the markets for us to make it, to eat it. And so that obviously involves petrol and really just increases the amount of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases that we put into the environment. And so also as food is transported over time, the nutrient level of the food decreases, right? That's why we garden at home, because with our home gardens, we're maximizing the amount of nutrients in our plants because we get to eat it fresh. And so with the hydroponic system, because many of them are actually built in cities, it allows the source of the food to be closer to us, which means that they're going to be packed with more nutrients. Many high-end restaurants I've seen actually in New York get most of their fresh produce from hydroponic stores in New York City. They get their fresh herbs and their fresh produce every morning, which is quite cool. So there's quite a few hydroponic systems that are used. Most of them use electricity and are quite complex. As you can see, the deep water culture bubbles oxygen up through the plant's roots. The Dutch bucket has a circulating system that drips water on top. Aeroponics aerosolizes the fog and the nutrients into the air to mix with the oxygen and increases the surface area of maximizes the surface area of the roots. That form of hydroponics is considered to be one of the most efficient and allows the plant to grow as fast as possible. Of course, it also involves very expensive equipment. Same with the flood and drain and the nutrient film technique, that's the circulating system as well. They all have very expensive technology and they involve electricity. And so that's not really something that we're gonna go into as beginners. So we're gonna use the Kratky method, which needs no electricity and is the cheapest option. And so the Kratky method, it is the simplest and easiest method. No pumps or electronics required to provide oxygen or water to the plant. This method suspends the plant's roots within a growing medium just above the top of the water. The roots absorb the water, the level of the water is able to drop, the roots grow, creating an air gap for the roots to receive oxygen. So as you can see on the right-hand side here, it's almost like a timeline of a Kratky method hydroponic plant. And so as the plant grows and needs more oxygen, the water level is reduced as it consumes that water, allowing for the plant to have more oxygen available to it. And so you can see that roughly, hopefully after 5 weeks, which you would typically harvest the lettuce, the water level is depleted and you're ready to harvest. However, if it runs out of water before that time, you can always refill it. Just don't refill it all the way to the top, right? Because the plant still needs that oxygen. So what can you grow? So we're going to be growing lettuce, and so the Kratky method is ideal for leafy greens and herbs as they're fast growing and they don't have fruits on them. So lettuce, spinach, parsley, thyme, basil, rosemary, and sage are all ideal for this method. So, after this, maybe if you guys want to go on a little adventure, you could grow several things. Typically, larger plants such as tomatoes and peppers that bear fruits need larger containers and are higher maintenance. So you can see that someone's growing tomatoes actually using a Kratky method, but they have like a massive 5-gallon bucket that they need because the tomato just needs much more nutrients and much more space. And because it has a fruit, you're going to need a different type of fertilizer, and you're going to need to be more aware of the pH level and the amount of nutrients in the solution. So it's a much more hands-on experience versus just growing a leafy green. So ingredients. So this is in the kits that you were provided. You should have these. So the container, which is that with the mason jar. Or you can actually use really any container. I've seen people use old yogurt containers. They cut a hole out of the lid. I've seen people use massive storage containers and they just cut out like 6 holes for many plants. It's all about seeing what works for you. You can use a lot of things from home. A net cup, these are really affordable and they're just a cup with holes in them to allow the roots to grow through but still suspend the plant in the water. You can actually make these at home as well. If you eat yogurt or a small, like one of those small containers, you can actually, if you have a soldering iron or something that's very hot, you can actually melt holes in the side so the roots can grow through. And rock wool, that's just the growing medium. This is the rock wool here. It's just a porous material that allows oxygen and water to be accessible to the plant. And you can actually use multiple ones. There's also the coconut husk is a great growing medium as well. But the whole point is that it's really just a pH neutral. It doesn't interfere in the growth of the plant, and it makes everything, the water, the nutrients, and everything's accessible to the plant. And actually rock wool is rock. So they melt rock and they spin it into wool, which is kind of cool. And it's also very affordable. Clay pellets, these are just to hold the plant in place once it's in the net cup. And you can really use many things. I've seen people use broken down rock wool to stuff in the sides. It just needs to be a material that can allow airflow. I've seen people use like little glass gems. And these clay pellets are made specifically for hydroponics, so it's ideal. But you know, if whatever you have lying around can work. I know everybody has clay pellets here. I typically wash my clay pellets, just rinse them with water before I use them, because they can be a little dusty and just can be kind of a little bit of a mess. And of course we need some water, and we need a water soluble fertilizer. So the one that was provided to you is an organic fertilizer made by Iguana, and the ratio of fertilizer to water is about half a teaspoon to 500 milliliters. And you typically will pre-mix this in a large container like so. And if your container is clear, you would need a material to block out the light. And that's also what the clay pellets do as well. You guys have newspaper over yours. I've used aluminum foil for mine. You can use tape, you can use paint, you can use cloth, really anything. You want to block out the light because algae can grow, and algae will suffocate your plant and take its nutrients. So you don't want that. And of course we need seeds. That's where we start. So I'm just going to quickly go over the assembly. I'm also going to show you guys in person. So we germinate the seed in the rock wool. That's the first step. You can see on the picture there, that's the seedlings are germinated in the rock wool. If you have a growing medium for germination, I would use that. I didn't, so I just flipped a container upside down, created like a little greenhouse, make sure that the rock wool is always damp so you can pour water into the basin. You can also use a plate and just put them somewhere to germinate in the light or the windowsill. And so once the roots have developed, you can place the seedlings and the rock wool in your net cup. And you'll know the seedlings are developed because the roots will be developed and the true leaves will have sprouted. And this is kind of this secondary leaf that comes out. You can see here, these two leaves were the original leaves that popped from the seedling. And then we have this true leaf that's quite developed. So this seedling is ready because this secondary leaf has come out. And so then once we place that in the net cup, we fill the empty space of the net cup with clay pellets, again, to block the light and hold it in place. We cover the mason jar in that opaque material, fill the mason jar with fertilizer mix, and we fill it until the water level is just above where the bottom of the net cup will be. I'm going to go into a little more detail later on what that water level will be because it can vary from plant to plant or from person to person depending on how developed your plant is. And so you place the net cup with the plant into the jar like so, and you'll just place it in a location with water, light. It has water. And I personally, I don't get much light, but if you have a grow light or if you have a nice balcony with a little bit of sunlight, that would be the perfect location. And harvest should take, it should be ready in 5 to 6 weeks, hopefully. And you should be able to harvest multiple times. As it grows, you can take some leaves from the outside of the plant and probably you'll get like maybe 2 full harvests out of it. It really depends. But yeah, so you should be able to harvest intermittently throughout its lifetime once it's developed. And so this is a little bit of science. There are some ideal conditions for this lettuce plant, and each plant will have different conditions. So for germination, they recommend between 10 and 22 Celsius. For growth, between 15 and 18. They say that above 21 Celsius, the lettuce may bolt, which it means it will flower, and the lettuce will get quite bitter. We don't really want that. Personally, my apartment is quite above 21 Celsius, and it'll be interesting to see if it actually bolts. If you're worried about that, I'm sure if it's placed outside, it should be no problem. Light, full sun to partial shade. pH, we're not really worrying about the pH so much with our method. It involves some extra costs and some extra complications. But I mean, the ideal pH is between 5.5 and 6.5. At extreme pH slip values, plants will not be able to absorb certain nutrients, or certain nutrients will become toxic for the plant. And so if you feel that your plant is not getting enough nutrients, or you see on the right-hand side, the leaves, they have some of these symptoms, those can be indicators that your pH is off. And if you believe that that's the problem, you might want to get a pH testing kit to see, and you can always add different solutions to balance out the pH. Hopefully this won't be a problem for us. It hasn't been a problem for me. I've just used tap water, so it really shouldn't be an issue. For the nutrients, you guys have the directions for the fertilizer mix, but if you ever get a new fertilizer, always read the directions on the back. They can vary sometimes. For some fertilizers have a different mixing rate for a circulating system with the electricity, as you saw before. They need more fertilizer relative to water, but for our systems, they may have, it's a still system, and so they have less fertilizer per amount of water. And again, hydroponics, a lot like gardening, is a lot about trial and error and finding out what works for you and your setup. It may take several attempts to see your desired results. Personally, my plants don't get enough light. I only get like 3 hours at the end of the day, and my lettuce plant is it's a little droopy. I think it needs a little more light, unfortunately, but I can't give it more light. So we'll see what happens for me. But it's a lot about experimenting and seeing what works for you. So now I'm going to show you how to build your system. I will. Okay. Can everybody see me? Is that full screen? I think. Okay. So you're going to start out, you want to germinate your seed. So you're going to take your rock wool and you're just going to place it in some water to soak up. It just takes like 10 seconds. You'll see when it's soaked up. And then you're going to want to take your lettuce seeds. I don't have lettuce seeds with me right now, but you want to kind of just open it up a little bit, and you can place the lettuce seeds inside. So if you're going to place this side up, you can place the lettuce seeds like a third of the way in, maybe like a pinky in. And I would plant several seeds, maybe 3, just to make sure that they all germinate. And so once they're placed in there, you can place them all the way back in the corner. You can just close it, and then you can place it where you want them to germinate. So I put them on one of these containers, and then I just put them like that. And it took me like 2 weeks for mine to germinate. I didn't have as much light. I know Shireen had better luck because she has a growing light. And so once they're germinated, if all of your seedlings have sprouted, you're going to want to thin them out. You only want one seed plant, or else they're going to be competing for nutrients and space. And so how you thin them out is you're going to want to separate the rock wool again, and you're going to want to select the weakest ones and pull them out. So you want to keep the strongest one. And I just like kind of pull it out, but you want to make sure that you're not ruining the roots or tearing the roots of the developed one. And if you feel that they're a little too tangled up, you can always use scissors. But like you saw, it's quite easy to just pull it out. So now we just have one plant in here. And so this one's actually ready as well to be planted now. And I planted my little seedlings in the dirt just to see a comparison. It's fun. I didn't really want to waste them. I felt like they were precious to me because, you know, I made them myself. So this is one that's ready to be planted. You can see that the true leaves are here. The roots are quite developed. I don't know if you can see, but they come all the way down to here. And so that's great. The first one that I planted, the roots weren't quite developed, and that caused a little bit of problems for me. So once the roots are developed, you're going to want to take your net cup, and it's a little bit tedious, and it can be quite repetitive. Like you have to repeat a few times, but ideally you want to guide the roots through the bottom holes of the net cup. And this will allow the roots to be suspended in the water. Especially if the roots are wet, they tend to stick to the sides. So it can be quite, takes a few times, but you can grab the bottom of the root, carefully just pull it through. And then you're gonna want to kind of hold it there, and then you wanna fill it with these clay pellets. And you just want one layer on the bottom. So that's gonna keep the plant suspended a little higher so it can get more light and it's just more accessible. And so that will take a good amount, maybe like 10 of these. You just scoop them up and fill the bottom. Yeah, and I think that should be good. You just make sure that they're kind of flat on the bottom, and then you can place the rock wool just on them, and you can see that we still have our little root here, which is great. And then you'll fill the rest of the area up with the rock, the clay pebbles, sorry. And so you just want to fill the area around, and you want a small layer on top of the rock wool as well, just to keep the plant sturdy. You most likely will have extra clay pellets, which you can use for other projects, and you can reuse these as well. All of these things you can reuse. Maybe not the rock wool, because it gets kind of destroyed throughout the plant's process. But you can see here, this plant is now ready to be transferred to our mason jar with the nutrients. So we're just going to put this aside. And I left my mason jar with no covering, just so you could see kind of the levels of water. But generally, yeah, it'll be covered. You want to do that before. Yours is already covered, but you want to do that before, because if you're trying to wrap it and you have liquid in there, it could be a little messy. So if you have your nutrient solution mix, so I just took a large water bottle like this, put the water in, and then put the fertilizer in, and then you just mix it around a little bit. I actually have a different fertilizer than you guys, so my color might be a little different. So don't be worried if you have a different shade of nutrient solution. And so we can put the net cup in here, and we can see that the root comes down just a little below the net cup. So we probably want to fill the water to about just to the bottom of these little like legs almost on the bottom of the net cup. You want the roots to be in the water, but you also want them to have access to oxygen. And so that in here, will have oxygen, because these clay pellets are porous. And so actually for mine, the first time I tried, my roots weren't developed and they weren't through. So I ended up having to fill the water a little higher. And that ended up being okay, because the roots weren't developed yet and it needed a little more time to grow. And as the roots grew, the water level has decreased, and now they're back on track. As you can see, there's like one little root down below there. So it really is just playing around with things and making sure that the roots are in the water. If they're not, add a little bit more water. If you feel like there's too much water, you can always empty it out. So yeah, I guess now I'll fill this one. And so you roughly, I guess I'll start with like halfway, just, you know, if you overfill, just pour it out and hopefully that'll be, let's see. So I just filled it with a little bit of fertilizer mixture, and I'll place the thing. And so I can see that it needs a little bit more. Yeah, and if some of these clay pebbles are a little smaller than these holes, so they might come out. You can throw those out if they come out, because you don't really want the clay pebbles to fall down in there. It doesn't really matter, but it's just not as clean. So we'll just add a little more. And so now we'll place this in again, and I can see that, okay, so now it's come to right below on those little legs. I know that the roots extends below these legs, so now this should be good. And I'm gonna look every morning, roughly, and sometimes in the evening as well, to make sure that the roots continue to be in the water. You can tell they'll have a little bit of moisture on them, and you just wanna make sure that they're getting enough nutrients. And so now this one's ready to be put in the windowsill, in the light, anywhere, and just wait and check in on it. And that's how you build your own system. It's quite simple. There's a few steps that can take a little bit of time and a little bit of patience, but yeah, once you get the hang of it, it's quite straightforward. And yeah, that's how you build your own hydroponic system at home. Is there any questions? I'm just trying to look in the chat. Yeah, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask. There will also be a recording posted, so you guys can come back and look at this. So once your seedlings have developed, you'll be able to follow the directions again as needed.
Odin,
Yeah.
how old is the first one that you planted?
So I think it's 3 weeks now. See if I can get a better angle. So it took like 2 weeks to germinate, and then this has been a week in this hydroponic system about, and I'm just surprised by how much it's grown, because like I said before, these ones over here that I planted in the dirt,
Wow.
and I gave them some nutrients as well. This one and this one were planted at the exact same time as this one. They were all part of the same seedling batch, and this one's just completely surpassed in size, which is it was very nice to see. Yeah, so I guess if done correctly, hydroponic systems they can promote more growth than dirt. Yeah.
Very cool. I planted my seeds, and they're still, well, it didn't take long to germinate, but they're not, the roots haven't grown through the rock wool yet.
Yeah, I was impatient, and my roots weren't as long as the one that I just planted.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I put it in, I had to fill up a little more water than I probably should have. Yeah, it's really just seeing what works for you. A lot of trial and error, you know, but thankfully there hasn't been too many errors on my part. And this is my first time doing hydroponics, and I just was looking online. Shireen gave me a book that was really useful, and I was able to I think figure this out. So I think it is quite straightforward, and I don't think anybody should have too hard of a time. And then if you want to do more, right, you can always expand this. You can get more larger systems. Yeah.
So
It's
Odin,
definitely a start.
Odin,
Yeah.
have you got me on unmute?
I can hear you.
Okay, because my thing still shows that I'm muted.
Oh, well, I can hear you just fine.
Okay, so I have two questions at the moment. One is the rock, the rock, what's it called? The thing that you put the seed in?
The rock wool, yes.
Yeah, the rock wool. And you said that they couldn't be used over again?
They can. You want to
What?
make sure that most likely all the roots and the previous plant has been taken out. And
Right.
at least for mine is almost split in half, just from opening it up. But I'm sure that you can reuse it as long as it's, you know, relatively clean,
Right.
and it's intact. Yeah. And they are like for a bag of 50, I think it was very affordable. And you can use other growing mediums as well. It doesn't just have to be rock wool. But yeah, you should be able to,
What,
you know,
like what other growing medium?
well, there's like these coconut husks. It has to be a growing medium that doesn't have nutrients already in it. So it has to be, um, you know, just a porous material. The only one that I know off the top of my head is these like coconut husk things. I don't know.
Are they the right size?
Yeah, so as long as they're large enough to germinate a lettuce seed and they can fit in these net
Yeah.
cups,
Yeah.
the size shouldn't really matter.
Yeah.
You want to be able to fill around the outside with these clay pellets just to be able to block the light. But again, like we have tons of space in this net cup. These could be larger, they could be smaller. And if it's smaller, maybe fill 2 layers on the bottom with the clay pellets instead of 1.
Except that it has to hang on the rim of your bottle.
Oh, the net cup.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the net
Oh,
cup.
okay. I thought you were on to talking about the net cup.
Oh, sorry. Well, so net cups you can get in many different sizes. Like I said, you can make them at home as well. For example, for this one, I still had the lid. So you can make it even a smaller entrance. And yeah, there's larger and there's smaller sized net cups than what was provided to you. Like those massive, I think in the previous post you saw the 5-gallon buckets,
Right. Yeah.
tomato plants in them.
Yeah.
They had massive net cups, and you can buy those.
Interesting.
You can
And
get these supplies online or at hydroponic stores. There's
still
one.
use the same size of growing medium,
Yeah,
no matter how big your net cup.
exactly. Or sorry, was that a question or?
That last one was a comment.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, but I do have another question.
Okay.
So I was having trouble. I think you said that you check, first of all, to put it in, you can't see the level of the water because it's already covered with newspaper.
Yeah. So what
I was thinking that I might mark it with look in and mark it with a pencil or a pen on the outside.
you could do that as well. What I did was when you put it in and then pull it out, you can kind of see on the clay pellets where they're wet or not. It's hard with this camera, but you can see which ones are dry and which ones are wet, and you can also see like moisture build up, like water droplets here. So you'll know based on like putting it in and taking it out where roughly the water level is.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can also mark with a pencil. That would be a great idea.
So then when you're checking and trying to only check once a day, you'd pull it out and you'd use the same, like you can see the moisture where it's been on the net cup.
Yeah, and after that, as long as the roots are in the water, you should have no problem. You want the water level to decrease as the roots grow.
Yeah.
And so I can see that here. It's kind of hard to see, but there is a root hanging down right here. And so that's great.
We're going to have our newspaper around it.
Oh, yeah. Yes. And so sorry. When you take it out, the roots, you can kind of see that there's like water droplets on them.
Okay.
They like it. Yeah, you can like sometimes the roots make like a branch, and the water gets trapped in between, and so you should be able to see. Yeah.
Show me again how long the roots are on yours.
So the roots they get caught sometimes because they're wet.
Yeah.
My root comes down roughly like half a pinky, so it ends here.
Okay. And how old is that one, did you say?
This seedling this one's about 2 weeks old, this seedling.
From 2 weeks from after you put it in the water? No.
Well, so this is the one that I just planted. So this one hasn't been in the water very long, only the past
Okay.
few minutes of this video. This one actually has a shorter root because when I planted this one, it wasn't very long. But you want quite a long root. So here's one that I could plant. And you can see that it has quite a long root coming down. And so that would be perfect to be placed in there.
Odin, it's Terry. Do we need to keep the newspaper on the glass, or was that just for shipping?
You do. So the thing, I've seen some people do it without, but there's a risk that algae will start to grow if there's light in the water. Like in a pond, you can sometimes the algae will grow on top, and it kind of suffocates the whole pond. And it's the same for this hydroponic system. So the algae will kind of suck up the nutrients and suck up the water, and the plant won't be able to grow as much. And so basically blocking out the light, it's supposed to mitigate that problem. However, I haven't experienced, maybe I'll grow this one without any covering, and I'll see if algae actually does grow. So from what I've read, this was a problem that people had, and this is how you solve it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And so I see someone asked if they can put it under a kitchen light. Most kitchen lights will not have the full spectrum needed for a plant to grow. Like my kitchen lights don't have the full amount of light spectrum that is needed. However, you can buy light bulbs, I believe, that do have that full color spectrum. There's also grow lights you can buy, and you could also put it outside. I hope that answers your question. It is not necessary to put the mason lid on to keep the cup afloat. As you can see, this one I have the jar on. When the jar is on, the net cup's just going to be a little higher. This one, the jar lid's off and the net cup's fine. As long as the net cup can sit and not fall through, you're good. So you do not need to change the water with a specific schedule. Hopefully, this method is, if your plant's growing, that'll have all the water it needs. If the water ever goes to below, like there's no water left for the roots, you'll need to refill it. But only refill it maybe like up to here if the roots are all the way down, because you don't want to suffocate the plant. But generally, you should not have to add more water, only if the roots are not touching the water.
So that first that first water, which is 500 millimeters and half a teaspoon,
Yes.
that's 2 cups, right? So that's gonna almost fill the mason jar.
Yes. So what I do is you make your solution in a large container beforehand.
Okay.
And so you can mix it around, and you can use this several times. This is more than enough.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It was more than enough, so you're going to have some to save.
Exactly. So I just have mine on my countertop, and I'll use it for the next one I make. Yeah. So I believe that, throughout the whole growth of the life, one of the questions is, can you ever take the newspaper off? I believe that you shouldn't. I think that algae can always grow. However, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna see what happens with this one without the newspaper blocking the light out, to see if algae actually does grow. But I think it's best to keep the covering throughout the whole life of the plant to ensure that the algae doesn't grow. So I see a question about how to check the water level when there's the covering over, and it is quite difficult. You're gonna have to look at like little clues, like I was saying to Mary, of like where the moisture has been, and like you can see on the roots maybe that there's a little bit of water. Hopefully, so when the root system really develops, there's going to be many roots, and you're going to see that when you pull it out, water's going to be dripping off of the roots. For now, on this one, I can see that water is on the net cup and the clay pellets, because you can see it kind of, there's drops there. Yeah, and for me, every time I pull this one out, actually, the root sometimes sticks to the net cup, but I can see, it's kind of hard to see, but you can see that there's a little water drop on the root there. So that means that the root is suspended in the water. And so, yeah, just be careful when you take it in and out to make sure that the root is still hanging down, because sometimes it gets caught up on top. And so, and you can check this more than one time a day. I check mine multiple times a day, but you probably want to at least check it once a day. I think that's all the questions. If you have any more, please send. Yeah, KT?
Yeah, I just wanted to know where you got your bag of 50 rock wools.
So we went to Burnaby. There was a hydroponic store called John's Plant Factory.
Yeah.
You can also order them on Amazon or any other online seller.
Okay. I know I looked yesterday and Walmart has these. You can get 10 for under a little over $9 there for these. So that's easy to get, but not the rock wool.
Yeah, rock wool, I think it's a little more specialized.
Yeah.
There are different sizes. I know I was looking on Amazon. You probably want one that's a similar size to this. I think they can go up to, I want to say maybe like 5 inches. They can get there's some pretty large rock wools. You want to just be aware of the size when you order them. You don't want to end up with one that's a little too large for lettuce. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions?
I know that you had suggested some resources. Perhaps we can email those to everybody.
Yes. So I can, they should be listed on the ends of the directions, but obviously you can't click on a link on a piece of paper. So that probably wasn't very helpful on my part. But so we can send those, that information to you guys. Shireen also gave me a really valuable book. I can actually go and get it real quick just to show you guys. It was really helpful, and they give you a lot of information on what kind of plants you can grow with hydroponics. Just give me 1 second, sorry.
I've got a question too.
I may be able to answer it for you, Mary. I don't know.
Oh, wait till you come back.
Okay.
You stick to your specialty, Shireen.
It's called Ditch the Dirt. It's a very helpful book. It's by Rob Lang. And what was your question, Mary?
Well, at the very beginning, when we put that, the cork, what's it called? The rock wool.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're putting it in a different container, and we have to find our own greenhouse lid.
So, okay, so for germination, yes, you have to put it in your own container.
Yeah. So some bowl, something that will hold water.
Yeah, I've seen, you can use a plate. I use a lid.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Okay, so then So then the greenhouse lid has to be something that will fit over that. And I'm wondering about the height of it. It has to be just not very high.
I don't believe that the greenhouse lid is necessary. I think that
Oh,
I think it adds, it probably allows for quicker germination because
right.
Hydroponics.
you keep the moisture in and
And it probably intends the heat, the moisture.
exactly. I actually just really used mine to protect the plant in case, like, because I had mine on the blind, so I didn't want to put
Yeah.
the doors down and just smash my plant.
Okay.
'Cause
Because
I
some
left-
of my recycling containers have the lid that goes with them, but they would be quite low to the seedling.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say this one grew maybe like 2 inches high. So as long as it's, I guess in total maybe like 3-4 inches
Right.
high, you should be good.
And we're waiting until the root comes down out of that rock medium. That rock.
Yeah, and so for me, it gets kind of smushed in here because it's on a flat surface.
Uh-huh.
So what you can do is you can just kind of pull them down.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're gonna
If you're going to use a greenhouse lid, it's going to have to be a bit high.
a bit high. Yeah, if you want to. I had mine with an air gap in here, so I don't even know if it made a greenhouse, and they germinated just fine.
Yeah, I expect it did. A little bit of, keeping heat and moisture in.
Yes, I think so. I think it contributes a little bit. Yeah, you could probably even use like a glass. You could just flip it over and put it over.
Right. Good point.
Odin, it's Terry. Can we get the PowerPoint presentation as well with those
Yes.
instructions? Okay.
Yes, I can. I'll send out the PowerPoint presentation. I'll send out some resources, and there'll be a recording of this as well available.
I believe the medium you were trying to think of is coir, coconut fiber.
There you go. There you go. Yes, I'm sure. Yeah. I believe that's one that you can use as well. Thank you, Terry.
I'm not sure that it comes in little pellets like that.
Yeah. Well,
It might.
here, I know they list a few here. So you can use, yeah, they say coconut husk, and either loose or packed into plugs. And they're often mixed with perlite volcanic pellets.
I can contact.
You can use recycled carpet. You can use rooting sponges. There's a few different possibilities. You can see that here's the rock wool here, and here's some of the other things that people have used. I think rock wool is typically the one that people use the most. I think it's the most effective. It's very affordable.
Subject.
And it is all natural. It's just rock.
As opposed to recycled carpet.
Yeah, exactly. But if you're on a budget and you want to just use stuff that you have at home, it's possible. I see one more question here. So I see someone say, hi Odin, when I plant tree in the water is usually smelly after 1 or 2 days and I need to change it. If not, the water will make the roots spoiled. Do you have the same situation? Could you please explain more about the ingredients of organic plant food? So organic plant food that's water soluble fertilizer is going to have a funny color and a funny smell. It's natural products. I'm not sure if that funny smell is due to the rot of the roots or just the natural components of the fertilizer. However, the roots shouldn't rot as long as they're getting oxygen. So that's, again, the balance of water and oxygen. If you're drowning the plant, the roots might decay, I believe. So as long as you're getting enough oxygen and enough water combination, then the root should be healthy. I don't personally know all the ingredients of organic plant food, but I do know that organic ones, they tend to smell and they tend to look pretty funny. And you guys can, yeah, exactly, as KT is showing. So that might be the smell. I guess you do say after 1 or 2 days. I guess it is, I don't personally know that, like, what is going on here. I guess I would experiment a little bit to see what's happening. I'm not sure. But as long as the roots are getting enough oxygen, they shouldn't rot, hopefully. Yeah, I haven't had a problem yet, but I guess we'll see.
Thanks, Odin.
Yes.
Yeah. I got the answer through your explanation. Because I may not get enough oxygen for my tree, so that's why the root spoil.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Perfect. Any other questions? If you have any other questions later, you can always email me when I send out this information. Yeah, feel free to contact me. And I'll do my best to answer. Yeah.
Thank you.
That was great, Odin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you. In the garden, Odin.
Yeah, I'll see you soon.
We will have other online workshops. Our next one will be The Wonder of the Honeybee. We just don't have a date yet, but we will email all of you once we have a time and day. So stay tuned. This was fun.
Any bees at home?
No, it's more just theoretical. That would be cool though, Mary.
That'd be very cool.
Yeah. If I could have them on my balcony, I would.
Yeah, that'd be quite nice. And you get some good fruits, hopefully.
Great.
Okay, yeah. If you guys have the chat open or not, this video is also available on Facebook. So I'll send it to you guys, and hopefully you'll have access to it on Facebook as well. Yeah. Perfect.
Great.
Well, I guess that's. Oh, the Facebook page is. I guess. Is it Disabled Independent Gardeners Association?
Mm-hmm.
It might just be shortened to DIGA for the Facebook. Search DIGA in Facebook. It'll come up.
Yeah. We can also include the link in the email.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
There you go. Hope that helps.
Okay, well, great job. I think we're done.
I think
Yeah.
All right. Do I just end it, or I guess
I think Taylor can end
Taylor's
it.
Just ended the live